I can't hear.
Oh yeah, that's not. I can't hear either. Right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Grange TV. We have with us the TAFE extraordinaire, Mr. Eli Hedges, and a special guest today that runs TK Podcast, great podcast that I listen to very frequently, Mr. Tristan Knell. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Fab. Thanks for having me, boys, and it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of the show, so thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, let's get started with this, man. How'd you get into podcasting?
Podcasting started 2.5 years ago. So I had a podcast called the Vision Board Podcast with another friend at the time. His name was Johnny, and we're working at the gym at the time because I took, even though I've told you I've been in finance for 13 years, I actually took a year off in between because I had a business called Key Equities, and unfortunately that went under.
What did Key Equities do?
So I was a stockbroker as well, but it was on a small scale, and we were trading through another. When you're a small broker, you can trade through a bigger broker, so they can take your back office operations. So you save a hell of a lot of money by outsourcing the back office. So what happened was they went bankrupt, and they were called BBY. So literally all our clients got frozen. All our operations got frozen, so that literally killed our business in like that. And we'd worked really hard, like 3 years worth, because we lost a lot of money because they got to distribute your broking fees every month as well. So they had actually held on to months worth of broking fees that we just didn't have access to. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that literally killed the business. So at the time, it was just I needed a break because I'd been around for nearly 10 years. So I was burnt out from finance. So I decided to do fitness because I'd done my Cert 3 and 4, I'd done my strength and conditioning courses because it's always something I was interested in because I had some good mates that did strength and conditioning. So it was just something like a hobby on the side that I did all my certs and stuff like that. So I thought for a year, why don't I try personal training? And yeah, I took that up. It was at Fitness First on George Street. And that's where I met Johnny. We decided to do a podcast one day together. The first few episodes were terrible. It's just really just the two of us talking shit. And then a good friend of mine, Curtis, he introduced me to Jeff Fennick. And he was the first big guest that we had on. It was like episode 7 or something like that. And I've always been into the fight game. So whether it's boxing or UFC, it's just something that's always interested me. So originally the podcast was kind of looking like it was going to evolve towards being a fighting podcast because when Jeff came on, they gave me enough ammunition to then get people like Billy Dibb on, Austin Trout, Michelle Waterson, and Stitch Duran, just people like that.
That's pretty cool people, man.
Yeah, some real cool people, but obviously it was on the back of having the ammunition because once you get a big name on, it gives you enough ammunition to test the waters to see who else might want to come on. So that once that happened, and then like the resume and the amount of guests that would come on just became really cool. And then I got to interview some really cool people, guys like George Foreman, Larry Holmes, like all these legends. And then that also Jonathan Thurston, Chalk, like Lane Beachley, like some of the, and that's only from like why I saw it was just a stepping stone. Like every time I would get someone major on, I'd see kind of who would be connected to them. And if you do a good job for someone and you treat them really well, usually they might talk to a good friend of theirs or something like that, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got that easy path, that direct path to landing like a bigger guest. Which
yeah,
is
absolutely.
Also good, you know. So that was where it all started. So we did that for about two years. It was about 180 episodes. So there's quite a bit of work in there. But at the time, you know, I think the best thing about podcasting is because it's still just an emerging sort of thing. It's like, well, there's no such thing as a podcast legend, really. So you got to learn everything kind of yourself. And that sort of thing, like 2 years ago, like I didn't know how to edit podcasts. I didn't really know, like from my finance background, I think that's why I can pitch people to come on the show real easy. It's just because of the business side of things, I know how to, like, when you put something out there, like what someone might go to in terms of attraction for them, like making it worthwhile for them to actually go on the show and things like that. So I think that's probably why, like, my pitch is pretty good in that regard. So, but still, you get better every single time that you do it. But the things like that, and then just the way production, because I like the production side of things and producing. Who knows where that might be? I love presenting, and like each time you do it, it's just you become a little bit better presenting, interviewing. You become really curious about how other people do it, and I'm just always up for learning, you know. So I always kind of learn from learn from the best, you know, guys like Larry King. I love watching his show because he's just so simple, and that's the way I kind of like doing it too. It's like if I've got someone on the show, I like let them talk a lot more than me. It's like a 90-10 sort of split, because if I want to do a podcast on myself, I can do it anytime.
Yeah, 100%.
I might not have that opportunity for a long time to get them back in, so I'd rather it all be about them and then just provide a good job for them, because I think my style of show is about kind of storytelling, and some, especially the athlete route, a lot of athletes don't know how to get their story out, so I just provide a path for them and ask them good questions, and then because it's comfortable, they share things that they might not otherwise share with other people. And I think that's where the success of the podcast has come, because I've just that relationship building plus kind of that just good atmosphere that I provide for them, and then the good content just flows from that, I reckon, man.
Did because you went to university and you did stockbroking, is that correct? Something
Finance,
like
man.
Finance,
yeah.
And then you're a stock. I don't even know if there's a stockbroking degree. Eh? Everyone's like, how dare you?
It's not a degree. You know, like before we switched on, we were talking about, you know, do you need to go to uni and stuff like that. Well, you essentially don't have to go to uni to be a stockbroker, but you do need to. At the time when I first started, you needed to get licenses to actually do it. Today's day and age, you can. If you work for a broker, they can say, yes, you can be a broker. You don't actually have to pass any tests. But back in the day, it was a hard test. Like, you study for 3 or 4 months, and when you pass, it's like a mini celebration within the office, because everyone's happy because they saw how much work you put into it. Because you have to do like a 50 question exam for starters, and then you got to get 40 out of 50, so 80%. And these questions are like really difficult questions too. And then you've only got an hour kind of to do it, so you've got time limit, that's all going on in your head. And then once you pass that, you come back for a second one, and it's a governor. So literally it's a verbal test. So literally what you just did on your test, your 50 questions, it becomes like scenario based then. And then it's just like, just say you're the governor, you just start spitting all these questions and you need to just answer it like that. So like the pressure's on. It's like they create like a scenario like you're kind of speaking to a client, or they put in messed up scenarios. So then, because obviously compliance is a huge thing, you don't want to be breaking the law and things like that. So they test you on that, and that goes for about an hour as well. So that's just like rapid fire questions just straight at you, and you're nervous as hell too. So once you pass that, it's just like, that's the start of things back in the day. And everyone goes out, has a good drink, and, you know, just really celebrates as a team, you know.
What made you want to do that? What made you want to do stockbroking, finance, etc.? What was the catalyst behind that?
I think back in the day, like I said, I think it was an easy entry into finance because I got into university before I actually sat my HSC. I was pretty good at sports and my grades were pretty good at school. So UWS gave me a place in applied finance early on. So I think during that, you kind of see different things. I watched Wall Street one day, and, you know, when you're 18 years old, you look at money and you go, well, how can I make the most money? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of where it was. So I would say that going into finance was kind of something, could I get a good career out of it? Yeah. Could I make good money out of it? Yeah. And I think that's kind of where it evolved from. And it's one of those things that's like sports media, that's where, because I love sports, man. And that's, hopefully, eventually that will be my, because I don't love finance. I like it. Do you know you got a difference?
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I could do finance for the rest of my life, but that means I never took a chance to do what I loved. And that's what's kind of like behind the podcast, behind some of the other things that I do in media as well. And that's all kind of trying to evolve to do what eventually like I love. Because I don't think that just because I'm 35 doesn't mean I can't change. Like, we're going to probably live, it's the way the world's living. We might live till 90, 100 years old.
Even if you don't, why not? Especially if you don't. Especially if you don't.
Even if I died in 5 years, at least I want to know that I had a crack.
Especially if you're going to die in 5 years.
I want to know that I had a crack.
100%.
You know?
Yeah, you can't use Bam Bam's quotes, mate. Bam Bam was saying that the
Did
other
he say
day.
that?
Yeah, oh, mate, he was saying
Maybe
that.
that's why I'm saying it.
And if you don't reference it, you're going to have problems.
All right, Bam Bam. That was Bam Bam's quote. Sorry.
Bam Bam 2018.
Sorry, brother.
I was going to ask you something. You were a ref.
Yeah, man.
Football ref for how long?
Since I was 14 till I was 24.
Honestly, that's a tough job, man. And I know, Eli, you've probably had heaps of problems with referees in your life. But
is Eli a footy player?
Yeah, I'm a player. I also coach a lot.
Yeah.
Can't ref. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to referee. I'm a little bit I know I'd be biased. There'd be grubs out there like me, and I'd just go, "You're not getting a decision, mate. That's it." So,
It is a hard
He
job.
played high level football.
Especially like when you see parents, like I remember when I was growing up, you're 16 years old, and I remember semi-final time because I used to referee in the Penrith district because I grew up in Quakers Hill, and you would see this referee, this is multiple occasions, getting chased by a parent on the field and shit. And this is like
bad,
an
man.
under 12 game, like under 12, under 13s. This is not even NRL.
And they're kids though.
Yeah.
And the refs are kids.
The refs are kids. Like we're all like 15, 16 at the time, and I've even seen referees get hit before on the field by players, by spectators. Like, and this is just a district game. Do you know what I mean? It essentially is just meant to be playing for fun.
And then there's also the coaching staff, the players. Do you know what I mean?
The abuse.
When something's going wrong, they look for someone to blame. It's the referee.
Well, the thing is, refereeing, someone has to lose. So there's always going to be, you're always a bad guy to one side. It doesn't matter what the score was. Even if it was 60-0, you're a shit ref. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a no-win situation.
What made you want to do that then?
At the time, all my good mates were getting into it.
Into refereeing?
Yeah, into refereeing.
Why?
So, because you can make pocket money, good pocket money out of it at the time too. So we all love football, and we're all playing footy, and it just gave us an avenue as well to make a little bit of money and taste it for another way. And like one of my good mates at the time, Jay, his dad was actually refereeing in like the Winfield Cup at the time it was called, not NRL.
Yeah.
So he would always take us to games. He would let us in the dressing rooms, meet all the players and stuff like that. And it just seemed cool, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, it was access, you know what I mean? To get access to all these players and stuff like that. That was our dream, you know? And then it looked pretty cool for, you know, the big crowds just to be on the field. Especially, I'm only small, so there was going to be a stage where I wasn't going to be able to play anymore. Like, I'm only 5'5", and my heaviest, I'm 70 kilos, you know what I mean? Like, there's only one. There's maybe Preston Campbell that did it, but apart from that,
Preston's bigger than you, man.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, Presto, like, he'll be about 75 kilos.
Yeah.
But there's only one Presto, do you know what I mean? That will never be done ever again. Like, he's just a freak, just footy player, man. But, yeah, that's probably a reason why going down that path. And you make good friends. Like, some of my best mates now are still refereeing up in the top grade now. And
what's you know, when you're going back to it, because that makes me, like, when you're a young guy and you're refereeing and the parents are abusing you and people are trying to jump the fence, because I see that too sometimes. We're at football games and I watch and I think, like, the ref made a bad call and I think, dude, he's a fucking kid.
Yeah.
Like, he can't even drive himself there. He rode his bike here, you know what I mean?
And he's a human, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and he's a little kid. What's that like for you?
but I think it's good because it helps you grow some balls, I reckon. Like, in terms of mental toughness, and like, if you want to grow some mental toughness, and go be a referee, because I think, especially if you do it as a kid and you stick it out for a long period of time, like, some of the things you don't even hear it. Like, even when I talk to some of the boys that are in NRL now, they can't even hear the crowd because they're mentally that switched on during a game. They've heard everything under the sun they've heard. So now it's just like another day. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But yeah, I reckon mental toughness is something huge that you could pick up from doing refereeing at an early stage. And people don't realise, like, the amount of training, especially when you get to a higher level, like when you do like junior representative football, which is kind of like Harold Matthews, which would be under 16s for all the NRL teams. They have under 16s, 18s, 20s. And
Did you referee there?
Yeah, I refereed there.
Up to what level?
Up to 20s.
That's a high level, though. That's
Yeah,
a
it
really
wasn't
high
too
level.
bad.
That's a really high level to ref.
Yeah. So I always have a joke because all the boys are in NRL now, but they never did a junior reps grand final, but I did. So that's my thing, and I'm better than them because they didn't do a junior reps and I did.
What made you not want to pursue it into the NRL?
Tell you what, 24, it just got to a stage where I thought that life was kind of more important because I was going overseas a little bit and my mates were going overseas. I was 24. I remember I got off a P&O cruise for a couple of weeks. It was the best time ever. I went to, midweek, I went to Danny Green versus Anthony Mundine at the footy stadium. And literally my last game was on that Saturday because I'd been thinking about it for probably like 3 or 4 months, whether I could continually push up and whether I should do it. And at the time, like, my second last game was an under 20s game. It was between Wests and Souths just here at Campbelltown. And yeah, it was just like, for me, like, in terms of mental, you know, we talked about, you know, that mental toughness. It's like, because I'm short, everyone always used to say, you can't referee because you're short.
Really?
Yeah. And that kind of like, that's why I just wanted to prove them wrong for a long, long time. And then it got to a
Why is that?
stage-
Because the players are meant to be intimidating, or you can't see, or like I'm asking genuinely. I don't
I
know.
genuinely don't know. It's just like,
Because I wouldn't have. Would you have thought that he can't referee because he's short?
No, wouldn't have picked that one.
yeah, so they put me on the touchline for ages.
Really, you can't referee because you're short.
Yeah, at the time it was like, and some good coaches too, like, and it was competitive. So I don't know, but I was a really good touch judge as well, and I did a lot of high level touch judging, and yeah, and then eventually at the end they gave me a crack, and I went really well because you used to get great like grades at the end of your game. Like there would be an assessor, and he would give you a score like, there's F, P, F, G, good, and there's all these different scores. Your 10 meters, you play the balls, even down to how you dress, mate. Like it was crazy. So my grades in that was just like stunning through the roof, and because you have to do a fair bit of self-analysis, and then you come back and your coaches take you through your tapes and things like that. So yeah, so I was too short, man. So
I wouldn't have picked that one. What did you get from Harrigan? Like, did you look at Harrigan and think when you did your podcast with him?
Yeah.
Did you think? Is there a part of you that wishes you went down that track? Not wishes necessarily, but would have liked to have gone down the track of refereeing and whatnot. Do you think it takes?
A little bit. Like I remember when I was 20 and I met Bill for the first time, and this is the only time prior to meeting Bill last Thursday that I'd ever met Bill. And I told Bill that I was going to break his record. Because Bill at the time, he'd done 10 grand finals, 21 origins, 25 test matches or something like that. Like his record's crazy. It will never be beat. But I'm always kind of been like that, just setting myself really high goals. And, what's the use of aiming low? That's the way I always see it. It's like you may as well aim high, and if you fail, you fail. Do you know what I mean? But I'd rather fail at 50% going high than fail at 50% going really low, because you will achieve shit off. You're always aiming down low. So,
what do you think makes someone like a Bill Harrigan such a good referee at that level?
I think his background was pretty good because he was in tactical police. So in terms of negotiations, he done all that sort of formal training and things like that. And he came through at a time where see, because now in today's day and age, every single game is on TV, every single game is recorded. The referee's mic'd up as well. So literally you can be sitting at a pub or at your home and you can listen to every single word the referee says. Back in the day, and Bill admits this, so he started in 1986. So when you start in 1986, you're not doing Channel 9 games. So no one knows what you're saying to the players. So you can swear at them, because Bill Harrigan in the first few years, he was a bully on the field. To get his respect from the players, he was binning players all the time. His vocab compared to his vocab at the end was like totally different. So no one knows how Bill used to speak to the players, but it was totally different to the way in the day and age they speak to players today. So he was able to do that because no one could pick up on it. Do you know what I mean? Only people that knew what he said was the players and himself. So that was kind of like his way of separating himself from the best. And then the same thing, like his mindset towards fitness and the way he looked after himself was he evolved it, because he used to train like a professional. These other guys, they would train once or twice a week. They would go to the pub all the time. But for him, he'd be training every day, and he'd be doing different stuff. He'd be doing weights, he'd be doing yoga, he'd be doing road runs, he'd be doing sprints, The way he approached it, he's the one that kind of evolved it, because the training they do now is like an NRL team minus them putting on weight pretty much. Like they train, if you see how fit some of my mates are, you would freak out. Like they'll be
I would imagine
Rob fitness, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like high level, they train every day, 2 or 3 times a day, like really high level guys.
How much is an NRL referee on?
They got different structures. So I think a top referee is 180 grand.
180 grand?
Yeah, that's their full-time job. But
that's a full-time job.
And that's like a guy that's been there for 10, 15 years. And then I think they get additional money for doing grand finals, additional money for doing state of origin. You're kind of guys that are just breaking in. They're probably going to get because they've got the pocket ref, the guy that stands behind the ruck as well. And that's the second ref that doesn't control at all. And I think he's probably on at 80, 90 grand. He's more like a part-time sort of referee. But then most of them probably earning between 100 and 150, because you would have a main sort of core group that are in that middle sort of bracket. So you have to think 100 to 150 grand. But the biggest thing is that it doesn't last forever. So a lot of them give up their careers, and then 180 grand. That's good money. Do you know what I mean?
While you're earning it.
But it's only a small timeline. That's the difference between them and a player, because a player could be earning 400 grand over a 10-year period, but a referee over 180 grand over a 10-year period. And then what's your next job going to be? Do you know what I mean? Players, they might have more opportunity because of their profile to go into something that might be able to maybe get 150 grand or 200 grand still. They might do some corporate work, or they might do some media work, but then the referees don't have that same opportunity. So then what do? Go back to doing a 50 grand job? But your family's used to earning 150 grand.
How much does the crowd and everything, do you think, affect the guys that are refereeing, or how much did it affect you? How much, obviously all circumstances are different, but how big of an influence is the crowd? Because, you know, sometimes you see, like, in soccer in particular, they say, like, you know, the crowd, if you play, like, say in South America and some of the South American countries, and I heard it now recently, I don't watch soccer. Yeah. My family's a soccer family, I'm not at all. But you see it, like, even in the World Cup, in one of the Australia's games, they said the crowd was like, it made whoever they were playing, I think it was France, they said that it felt like they were playing here at home in Australia.
Yeah, because of the crowd.
The crowd was so full on. And I know, like, when you've seen, like, games in South America and that, like, it goes off and they reckon it's like a 12th player kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience things like that?
Well, probably not to the degree, because you'd do a game before first grade. So the crowd might only be, like, max maybe 3,000 or 4,000, and then it builds up after just before first grade, then 10,000 people just flock through the door. So I'm not sure, like... But, sorry,
I was just going to also ask you, not necessarily in the magnitude of the crowd, but I think if you're a kid and, like, and you play here, I don't want to say a football team, you know, because people go, no, don't say that, we're not like that.
Yeah.
But you play here at a local game and you have, like, a whole bunch of aggressive, mean-looking parents and cousins and uncles and that, and they're all yelling at you. Like, that'd probably be worse than...
Oh, it's way worse. I'll tell you one thing.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's like worse?
Being in the park footy, when people are just standing on the fence, you can literally hear every word. But if you go into a big field and they're all spread, you don't hear anything.
And there's no security at park football.
Nah, pretty much not. It's like literally... There's a ground manager, but the ground manager's like 80 years old.
I've seen the ground manager,
He's like 85 years old. He's not doing
And you've got a 16-year-old kid there and you see parents run on and shit. Like, it's crazy.
It's crazy how much. And people don't realise that, you know, they're giving up their time so then your kid can have a game and have fun and maybe even develop into the next level. And you're chasing him around the field. It's like, what are you doing?
Like, why would you do that?
I just remember one story when we went to Rotorua for New South Wales Country back when I played schoolboys. We rocked up at Rotorua Boys High School and we were meant to play on the main field, but one of the cross posts were cut out, like it was busted up. And we said, what happened there? And they said, one of the parents got so angry with the game that he walked home, it was only a block away or something, went and got a chainsaw and came back, and while the game was going on, he was so...
while the game was going on?
Yeah, I'm not joking, and we had to go play on their second field, and it was full on. So...
It's crazy.
Yeah, imagine being the referee for that game.
Anyway...
So, yeah, you would have seen some...
So it would be harder for a young guy coming through park football.
Yeah, for sure. But it toughens you up, like I said before. It's
if you survive.
Yeah, that's the thing.
If it doesn't get to you with a chainsaw.
And I think that's where the good referees do come through. You can see, because there's some districts that have that sort of style. It's like Penrith, Parramatta, South Sydney,
West.
Yeah, it's like...
How angry would you have to be? I'm sorry, I'm still fucking stuck on the chainsaw. Because you have to get it. You have to go home and get a chainsaw
and come back,
and then come back.
Yeah, but they love their football over there in New Zealand. They're so intimidating too. Before you play any team, they do the haka. Like, the team will do their own haka, and then the school behind them, the rest of the school, all the boys and the rest of the school will do it. So you're standing out there with your 14 mates or whatever it is, and there's the team there, and then the rest of the school, and the parents and that, the fathers and that will get into it too. So they're on the sideline, they're doing it, and everyone's just screaming at you and that. So they're just that into it over there. But yeah, like I said, imagine the referee in that game. I don't know.
The chainsaw would throw me off more than the haka.
New Zealand, but that's like a religion over there. Like, for them with union.
Yeah.
You played union, as well as league.
Yeah, that was schoolboys union. Yeah.
Fuck. So it would be fucking a lot harder.
Oh, massive, man.
And you get nothing, a few bucks.
You get what? For an A grade game, you might get $50 or something.
Man, a big massive shout out to the refs that do those park football, because that was the thing. As soon as when I was watching that Bill Harrigan thing, because I grew up here, I didn't play a lot of football, but I played a little bit of football, and I used to always think, what the fuck are you doing? Like, not like, why are you doing this? Because like there was always think like, you could not get me to do this.
Yeah.
The refereeing, not from a detrimental perspective. Like, I was actually like, my whole life I've always been like that. So now I get one on my podcast.
They need more money in that sort of system, because
they need a fucking SWAT team.
Yeah, without grassroots refereeing, there is no NRL.
100%.
Without referees, the games don't go.
It's finished.
There's no game.
You know, and I think like, and I say this like, you know, I've coached wrestling and everything like, and those sports like wrestling, MMA, but I coach grappling stuff. You know, like, and not decent level and not, but that's not the issue that I was going to say.
Yeah,
there's a certain subjectivity to the judging and the scoring and the refereeing.
Yeah.
So say, and you can say there is in rugby league as well, but I think there is a little bit more clear cut in that I put thing down and it was a try, whatever.
Yeah.
In grappling, you can be like, because like, say for example, if you get to a certain position and you hold it for 3 seconds, you get a point. But if in those 3 seconds a person regains, then you don't get it. This is in some grappling.
So the scoring's a lot harder to.
It's very subjective.
Know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like rugby league is a try. It's 4 points.
My 3 seconds could be totally different to
Yeah.
3 seconds. So as a coach, I'm going, that's 3 points. In fact,
Yeah, I agree.
And I think sometimes with that, and I see parents lose their mind, like fucking lose their mind, dude, like over shit. And they come to me as a coach and they're like, why aren't you saying something? Like, not now because I don't really coach like that, but before, yeah, why don't you say this or why don't you say that? And I think like, like, and it's hard for some, not all parents, but you just remember the fuckwit one.
Yeah.
You're not a fuckwit people, like, but I just remember some of the people and you'd want to say to them, hey man, like, it was a bad call.
But they don't realise that they're putting into their kids bad sort of qualities as well.
Bad. And that also, you're thinking like, don't you understand that?
It's just an excuse now. So that kid that lost, he probably lost fairly.
Most of the time you just lost.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden he's got now excuse because the coach didn't stick up because the refs dodged him. Do you know what I mean? And that's how he goes home.
And I also think like in life, that exactly what you said. And then I also think in life, like, fuck, you know what? It was a bad call and you didn't get it. And one day you're going to go to a job interview and you should have got the job.
But you're not going to get it.
But you're not going to fucking get it.
Instead of picking yourself up and going for another job interview, you're going to cry for a week and then you're going to miss another opportunity.
And the other problem is, this is the thing that people don't get with that, is when it's, I handballed in the penalty area and the ref didn't call it.
Yeah.
I don't go and grab the ball and go, nah, hey, give them the penalty. You know what I mean? Huh?
No?
No, I don't. Like, if they don't call it against me, the life has moved on, mate.
Yeah.
And when things go in your favour, you don't stop the match and go, actually, sir, he did pass my guard. You know what I mean? Like, you just carry on. So what, when it's your turn, you're going to blame the refs and whatnot. And I just think like, it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
Take it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that is a big part that people need to learn, is like, you're not going to get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fucking there's bigger things, like someone in your family could get cancer one day.
Exactly.
And you don't deserve it.
What the refs freaking...
Yeah, but not only that, you don't deserve that. No, but it's happened, and deal with it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's it.
You can't change it.
Nah.
Paul Briggs actually told me a good quote. He said, you win or you learn, you never lose. So if you take that kind of approach, and that's the approach I take now, even when setbacks happen, it's just like, well, what did I learn from that setback, instead of, oh, it's their fault.
Yeah.
And then your mindset's a lot different, and you just get on with things. You know what I mean? You can't change it. You know what I mean?
Mark, we had it, now we always say it with Rob. Like, Mark said something the other day, well, when we had him on the podcast, but I like, you think of viscerally, but he said it like, and I was like, that's 100%. Like,
Yeah.
basically, if you're in the fight game, like, there's an ass whooping waiting for you at any junction, or what do you think, you were just gonna get in there and beat the fuck out of people? That's not fighting. That's bashing people. That's not that sport. So if you're in anything, if you're in business and finance, you're going to take big wins.
You're going to take some big losses.
You're going to take some big losses, man. If not, what do you think was going to happen? You think you were just going to exponentially win?
Like a line like
yeah,
that.
just keep winning, just keep going. And like, no, that's not how it happens, man. So you got to take, and there's always like, oh, why did I lose? Or why did you fucking lost because guy scored more tries than you, man.
Yeah, you just weren't good enough on the day sometimes.
Oh, the ref didn't like me. Of course, no one likes you. It's not just the ref. Look around you. Nobody likes you. That's what I feel like saying sometimes to people. Like, the refs are against me. I'm like, because you're a dickhead.
Yeah.
Because you're a dickhead. Because you chop down trees. We chop down the fucking post with a chainsaw. What do you think was going to happen? You think people are going to like you?
I think people take losing too seriously as well.
Yeah, badly.
I think in boxing is probably the worst, where you can't get a loss on your record. But that's what I like about MMA now, the fact that you can have, like Rob's got 4 losses on his record, but he's the best in the world. And do you know what I mean? Like, and that's the beauty of it, that he learned how to lose and made him a better person and made him a better fighter.
One of the big things that's commendable, say, with Rob as well, is like, he goes in wrestling comps, goes in jiu-jitsu comps, and like, he might do, I don't know, 10 matches in a day and lose one of them.
Yeah.
And the dude that beats him, it's like, he
thinks he's king of the world.
Oh, the bit, like, you know, and like, they don't get, like, it's nothing. It's just like, it's just a jiu-jitsu match, and like, it's just like, he makes no excuse. He makes no, oh, I'm wearing a gi, you fuck with, no, it's just like, he's there.
Very down to earth.
Man, he's there to learn,
Given his level right now.
And people don't get that. Like, you know, it's and I think that, I honestly think that stunts a lot of the guys that are getting to that upper level, because they're like, oh, I can't compete.
Because they don't want to be embarrassed by losing, but Rob's learning. So it's like,
you're not going to win all the time, but it's not even like, it's not even a fucking thing to lose, or say, for example, if we do a fun run and there's going to be like 30, 15-year-old kids that beat him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But, or more, any of them will beat him. Like, but it's just all part of the learning process. One of the things, I watched your listened to your Dorian Yates one, and he was saying about how he used to train in England all the time and never really go to the States, which was the mecca of weightlifting, at least back then. I don't know if it still is now, I'd imagine so.
What's that point of difference?
Yeah, and he used to love the fact that nobody knew what he was doing, and that he could train in his little dingy gym and nobody could see how he was growing and whatnot. And that's one of the big things that draw a parallel with what Rob does, because he trains here and he's not in the US with...
So people don't know what he's doing. I think with Dorian, it was like, you know, you see all the time on Instagram, you got all these fitness models, people that compete, and they show their body off every single day. They've got to take a selfie. But with Dorian, he never did that. He had his jacket on. He used to train like a jacket that you're wearing now, because he wanted no one to know what was happening underneath. That was his point of difference. You know, that was his little secret away from everyone else. And I think that's why the people that compete now, that's why they give away that mental edge that they have by putting it already out there. Your competitors already know what you already look like.
It's hard enough as it is.
Yeah, but and that's the thing, that Dorian used to beat people as they hit the stage, because for the first time he'd unveil this thing. So he was training his ass off this entire time because he knew he had to get to that level, or the others were all just showing each other their bodies every single day. So they already knew where their competitors were. He didn't know where his competitors were. They didn't know where he was. So he was always training on a level that was above everyone else, and that was kind of his mental edge.
And you got to have, I think, a certain amount of faith. Like in today's world, like there's so many things. Like I was just having a conversation with Rob before we came. And people go, "Why don't you do this? You can do that. You can do this. You can do that." There's so many things that like people say, like this training method and da. And you got to kind of pick what you're doing.
Yeah.
Have faith in what you're doing. Stick in it. Be consistent. Because like variables and all that, there's so many of them. And I think when I listened to that with the Dorian thing, like that was very prevalent for me, that particular podcast, in that he knew what he wanted.
Yeah. He
knew what he was doing, and he had faith in that, and faith in the process and in the program.
I think you got to find what works for you as well.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Like I think a lot
but
of
people...
But
he had faith in what worked for him.
I think especially kids don't get it these days. They just got to figure out... There's so, like, we're not reinventing the wheel. Everything's already been invented. But there's a kind of system that you can put in place that will work for you. So, for example, what Rob does in training, if I did it, I'm not going to become a UFC champion. It's probably not going to work for me, or for another kid that's growing up in the streets right now. But there might be for someone that is a good fighter. There might be a process that he has to or she has to find that will lead her or him to becoming a champion. But you can't just copy Rob or copy Mark. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a process for everyone. But it's out there. It is out there. And if you just got to find it and figure it out for yourself.
The David Lyons one, that was interesting as well. I liked some of the stuff he was saying about the balance between enjoying what you do and the ability to be successful.
Yeah.
At what time do you think in your career and whatnot does that hold true, or when that kind of linear relationship doesn't?
Oh, balance, I reckon.
Because now you're going through that yourself.
Yeah.
As far as thinking whether to jump out of the podcast. I mean, whether to jump out
of finance.
Yeah, and go into thing. And myself, like, we're kind of, luckily nobody's going to fucking listen to this. But
you're announcing your retirement, son?
Yeah, I'm kind of going through that type of thing now as well, where you're going to, like, you turn up one day to work or to whatever it is that you're doing, and you're like, I don't know that I'm really digging this anymore. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it takes a man, a strong man, to realise that he's not loving something. But that's why I always wanted to kind of do something. I'm always kind of working towards my goals in the background, because that's what I want to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't just sit there and assume that someone might want to hire me in 5 years' time. I'm building my little action plan in terms of getting experience, interviewing some top line athletes from all around the world, going back to uni to learn some more production skills and learn from different mentors and things like that, building your network. Because the last thing you can do, like, I would love talking with TK to be eventually maybe a TV show or a radio show at a big network. But if I don't build my network now, when it's ready to go in 3 years' time, like, if I keep going at the pace I'm going now, I'm going to have a major show that I can rely on people. I can ring up Fab, do you mind coming on the show on a Sunday, Arvo, and spending a little bit of time? You'll probably say yes.
Yeah,
because we build a relationship. Do you know what I mean? We build a relationship. But if you go into that without relationships and you go without doing all that work in between, well, the show's going to be shit in 3 years' time, because I've got no one it'll be me speaking on a microphone.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people fail. They think that they can just be given something. It's just that hard work in between. And then when you're ready, have that kind of drive and that dedication to take a chance at something else, instead of trying to go through your whole life just doing that one thing that you might not be in love with. So I think that's kind of my plan, is that in the next 2 or 3 years, I do want to make that jump, but also I want to do the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to, when I get there, I don't want it to be a 1 month stint because I didn't do all the work in between. When I make that jump, I want it to be, true and powerful, and I want it to, like, really succeed. And just, I know that I've done all the work and I've got the skills to do it. And, like, if I did it next month, I don't know if I would. But I know in a couple of years' time, if I keep going at the pace and the learning that I have done over the last 2 years, if I keep doing that, I think in 2 years' time I will be ready.
How'd you get onto Dorian Yates?
Dorian I interviewed a guy called Brian Rose. He does London Real. It's a big show over in London. He's an American guy. And I'd been pestering him for, like, probably a year to go on the other show that I had. And eventually, like, I must have sent him 50 emails, man. And then eventually he wrote back saying, I love your persistence. You remind me of myself. I'll come on. So I did a podcast with him, and that just gave me an avenue, and I got connected. I'm trying to think. I think I wrote to Dorian's wife. His wife is a fitness model.
That's a fucking bad start.
Because
it's a good way to get your arm ripped off.
On Instagram, on his Instagram, sometimes they have their email.
I don't know if I want to hear this, man. I had no part in this.
So her name's Gail. So I just wrote to Gail because I followed her on Instagram. She's a fitness model and she's really good. So obviously, you put a little bit of you look great in your photos. It's not going anywhere good.
No, this is getting worse. This is getting worse.
And then I just mentioned that.
So he's that guy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
And then I told her that I knew Brian, and I had a couple of other big bodybuilders that had come on. Frank Zane came on, and another guy called Ben Pekolsky. So they were, like, really big names in sort of bodybuilding. So I had a little bit of ammunition to take to Dorian. Like, had his mate Brian on the show, a couple of bodybuilders. So I thought I'd pitch him. So I pitched Gail first. I said, do you mind taking this message to Dorian? And she said, yeah, no problems. And then I just followed up with her one day. And then I got an email back from Dorian with her CC'd and like his social media staff CC'd. And they wanted to do the podcast. And then, then eventually, it took a while. But yeah, we got it together. And yeah,
that's the other thing people don't get, like, even with the podcast, like it takes, you don't just, like say you and I, you got jobs, you got your million things to do. And I think the first time that I messaged you, say, oh, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
I don't know, it was when we first started.
It was probably like 5 months ago or something, yeah.
And then you got to just try and work it out, you know, like that.
Yeah.
When you, especially when you're starting, it's not like if you got like 1 million followers that you're probably getting 10 emails a day going, can I please be on your show?
Yeah.
That isn't what happens. Like,
and you got to be flexible too at the start. And I think you got to be flexible. What I did at the start is I did a lot of phone interviews to start and a lot of Skype interviews. Probably the first 20, 25 are Skype and phone interviews to build up that base. So then when I took my ammunition to see who was on the show, I had all these mad people because, like, realistically, Skype and phone interviews can be done like that, right? They don't even have to get changed. So a lot of them say, yeah, it's only 45 minutes out of my time. I don't even have to leave my house. And then all of a sudden, you've got this mad list of 25 people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, everyone wants to do it in person. I'm lucky where I live, I've got a study that I can record out of. And then it's even better because where I work now at Barangaroo, it's a brand new office. So people like coming in, and works pretty nice about, like, anytime I need a meeting room, they just say, yeah, just book it. It's fine. And they like the fact that, you know, high profile people walk in and out of the office and things like that. But
you know, it's important. You know, it's funny. You just said what you said then. It's funny because there's a lot of people that don't even understand that. Like, if you got smart people around you, they get straight away, oh, we got high profile people walking through the office. What that means is that means something good, you know what I mean? It's not negative. But a lot of people that think they're smart will be like, well, what does that actually bring to the company? You know what I mean?
Well,
so that's good as well.
What I took to marketing last week, and I'm just waiting for the marketing manager to come back from leave, is like, well, in these meeting rooms, it's just like, you know how we've got a dark wall behind us? Well, our walls are just white because obviously it's an office. So, but because I work for CMC Markets, like, I said to him, why don't you put a banner in the background, pay me some money that I can use for marketing in all these Facebook Lives, because all the Facebook Lives I've been doing have been like getting some really good numbers, do you know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't matter whether on a live video, it doesn't matter if someone listens for a second or the whole thing. They're going to see CMC Markets first thing they see in the background with me and this athlete. So you've got a connection to a good athlete, and for this entire time the video runs, you're going to be in the background as well. And I'm not asking for much, maybe some money that I can do some Facebook boosts with. So literally you're just paying for your logo to be. So
it's going to be up for however long.
Forever. Yeah. Until I delete it. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, you got a good attachment into a brand. How, like, because they sponsor New South Wales Waratahs, but apart from that, they don't really have a brand connection into sports. And the way I see it is, like, everyone I have on my podcast is always positive and, like, have really good profiles in terms of they're never, like, in trouble off the field. New South Wales Waratahs, they've had some trouble because of Izzy Folau this year. And it's like, do you really want to be associated with him anyway? So I think it's a good plan, man. And it's something that, you know, they got access to. I'm going to be dead doing it anyway, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I wanted to ask you something else.
Yeah, man.
You do you know, with Tim Zoo?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what do you think, how much, because I was just at Rob's house before I came here, and I was playing with one of his sons.
Yeah.
Little Jack, and Jack is...
He's the one with the hair, right?
Yeah, that kid.
I remember last time I went to his... Because he was living at Miranda at the time.
Yeah.
And just a small little...
He would have just been born, but Jack.
He had this huge hair. Like, I think it was after the Natal fight, because Rob was still... He had, like, his hand was still broken. Yeah. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, Jack would have just been born then. Like, maybe a year old.
Yeah. How old's he now?
Jack would be 2.5.
Okay.
Unless there's another kid that we don't know about. But I'm pretty sure it's Jack. And he now, like, I look at, he did his first wrestling class.
I heard it on the podcast the other day. You had to kick him out or something, right?
Yeah, mate. It was, you know, I really, when I told the story, I said I kicked out a big Islander from the class. And I told the story to everyone like that. But it was really a 3-year-old boy. But, you know, it doesn't matter. That shouldn't disturb my bragging rights.
It's a good story, though.
It's a good story, man. But he, I was looking at him, and he's going to end up playing football or fighting.
Yeah.
Or probably doing both. Like,
It's in his genes, man.
you just see it in him. I can just see it. You know what I mean? And like, I don't think Rob wants him to fight. I just knowing people. I'm just knowing people. I know people. I'd rather he didn't either, but he probably will. And he's always, no matter what, is going to be Rob's son. Like, as in, like, that's always going to be the situation. Is like, your dad was the world champion, and so coming up, how much do you see that with Tim and Kostya?
That's hard, man, because Kostya's an absolute legend. You know, he's one of the greatest of all time. But you see in Tim, when you meet Tim in person, what I really admire about him, he kind of wants to do it his own way. Like, he's had no help, like, in terms of his dad. I think he's come to 1 or 2 of his fights, but he could easily make his dad train him or something like that.
His dad could bankroll him and get him more easy fights and do zoo promotions, and there's a million things. Yeah, there's heaps of stuff he could do.
But they're starting from the start again. Like, Costa's got a couple of his good mates helping Tim in terms of advising him and managing him, things like that. But literally, they're doing everything themselves. You know what I mean? Like, and he runs the PCYC at Rockdale. That's the Zoo Academy, and Tim actually runs that. So just like you and Rob take sessions at your gym, helping the kids and taking them through, Tim does that as well. That's his job. Do you know what I mean? So just because his parents are rich doesn't mean that he doesn't do the hard work and give back to the community and things like that. So, and I haven't seen him like remove that as well, because last time I saw him was in March, and we did the podcast in the ring at
I saw it already, yeah.
At the boxing studio.
Listen to it. Sorry,
yeah. And he had 7 fights, but his schedule was still the same. Do you know what I mean? He trains twice a day, but at the same time, he was still putting 8-9 hours in the gym working, because that's originally his dad's gym, which was left to him, and now that's his business. So hats off to him, man, because that's hard. Could you imagine being Costa Zoo's son? They're going to compare him until he wins a world title. Even when he wins a world title, they'll compare him
no matter what.
That's even worse when he wins a world title, because everyone will know who he is.
He has to unify, and if he doesn't unify,
he's shit. You know what I mean?
Like, the people that sit there, like, you know, like you were just talking about it on the social media, like, no matter what, like, there's just people that are just fucked, you know.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna pick, oh, you didn't unify, or he unified but he didn't knock him out, like,
exactly,
whatever.
Just for him to have one boxing fight, I reckon is enough to, I don't know, to be a fighter in general. It's like people pick on fighters, even the ones that get their asses handed to them, but they have the guts to get in the ring.
Yeah, 100%.
That's you know, you put your life on the line. You know, it's not playing badminton or playing squash or tennis.
So with him, how much do you think he feels that pressure?
You'd say,
because
I reckon the pressure makes him a better fighter. You know how sometimes you get a drive from people saying that you might not be able to do it, or your dad's better than you, or something like that. I reckon he probably feels, just having a look at him, I reckon he thrives with the pressure.
He looks like his dad, eh?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they're a splitting image.
It's so crazy.
He's just
Have
bigger.
you seen him?
Yeah.
He looks like his dad, and he's like got the same kind of punch, kind of thing.
He's just bigger. He'd be a couple of weights, because he's, I think, his junior middleweight now. So Costa, I think, was a lightweight. So I think there's 2 divisions between them.
Because some people really struggle with that, don't they? Having their dad was the biggest spotlight. Was it Chavez? Chavez really struggled.
Oh, big time. Chavez Jr.
He wanted to separate himself from his dad as much as he could, but just how much the Mexican population loved, do you know what I mean, Chavez Sr., he just could not do it.
And that's big shoes to fill, you know.
Oh, massive. Okay. It just depends who you are. Look at Choc with Tony Mundine. If you've seen Tony Mundine, I'm not sure if you've seen clips of him fight. Incredible. He would have been a world champion these days. Carlos Monzon was the champion back
just
then.
A bad time.
He's just the greatest of all time. You know what I mean? Like any other era, Tony Mundine becomes a world champion.
The difference, I think, and I follow boxing as well, so I know about the Mundine family, of course.
Yeah.
The difference, I think, with Tony Mundine, it wasn't as massive. It was a golden era of boxing, but nowadays, like, I think, like, with Kostya Zoo, it's like, it's closer to the time. It was like mid-90s, whatever.
We just saw all of his fights, so we know who he
is. Yeah, so our age group have seen all his fights.
Yeah.
And I think that the media was different. Like, the media was starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
And Costa fought in America too.
And that's what I'm saying.
So he's a worldwide star.
Yeah.
So.
The pressure there is massive. I think Mundine, big pressure for him, because he came not only was he Tony's son, but he came from such an
NRL.
illustrious rugby league and decorated rugby league career that there was a massive amount of pressure. But
hats off to him, but
fuck yeah,
I can't wait. I want to see that Jeff Horn fight, like, big time. I'm
They
really
reckon
interested
it's
in
in the
it.
talks, don't they?
They reckon it's nearly signed.
Yeah, I heard in November. They're pushing for in
50-50,
Brisbane.
71 kilos.
fuck. That's
And
gonna-
I'll give him a chance. Like, when
Mate, I've got a lot of friends who are just going, what's Jock doing? Do you know what I mean? But if it's going to be his last hurrah, he's going to, do you know what I
one
mean?
of the
He's
best
gonna
athletes Australia's ever.
Yeah.
Like, when he's switched on and he prepares for a fight like he wants to win, like, he's got the pedigree to do it. And, like, he's going to big size advantage on Jeff Horn as well. Psychologically, Horn's probably going to get damaged from what Terence Crawford did to him.
Yeah, for sure.
be interesting, man. I'll
Tune in.
mate, I'll pay the pay-per-view. That made me buy the pay-per-view for him and Green.
Maybe they should make me the promoter. Fucking hell.
Fuck, man, I was not, but like when him and Green fought, that I think that was like this last fight was like the highest selling fight for like a
For 40-year-olds.
for two 40-year-olds and no title, like nothing on the. I don't know if there was a title or some shit, but it wasn't like.
Because I think it was a cruiserweight Australian title, but it wasn't a world title or something.
Yeah.
And Chuck's cruiserweight, like, how? Like,
I bought it.
So did I.
I bought it.
of course.
You know, I
You just wanted to know what would happen. Do you know what I mean?
100%, and they both, I believe, like they both paid their dues, man. Like I
They've
would
done a
watch.
lot for boxing, yeah.
I would watch it again. You know, like,
Yeah, I'd probably watch at the time because I thought Chuck won. I
Yeah.
thought that I wouldn't watch it again. But then when I was thinking about it, going, well, no, I'd probably watch it again. Like, after that cheap shot in the first round, you know, you don't know. Maybe Danny Green could knock him out. Do you know what I mean? I think it's the big thing. Like, all these other people have put Mundine on his ass, but this powerful guy, Danny Green, could just never do it. He's had 20 rounds with him, 22 rounds with him now. Hasn't knocked him down once. And he's been knocked down by these little junior middleweights and stuff like that. And Green is like an absolute monster. And you go, that's just two guys that were just two rivals. It's just like a backyard school fight, do you know what I mean? It's like they just hate each other. They're not going down. And that's just incredible. If they did it again, it'll be a mad fight
I'll
as
watch
well.
it. I'd watch it. I'd watch him like fight under 50s. You know, I would.
Masters.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. So what are some other interesting people you've had that really stand out for you?
This year, well, because talking with TK is predominantly kind of towards sports. Like, I've been enjoying, because of my rugby league background, like, I think the NRL ones really stand out because I just know back to front, I know the stories. Like, some of these stories I ask him are from just things that I've grew up when I was in the 90s, just always wanting to ask him. And I think that's kind of where the NRL guys stand out. But same things, you make some good friends out of it as well. And a few of them have asked me to help them set up podcasts, which I really enjoy doing too. Just like mentoring him and teaching him from the start to the finish how to put together a podcast and how to contact people from the start. It's something I really just enjoy, just kind of becoming friends with people, networking, and then giving back to them as well. Because I always believe that, you know, you should share the information and the knowledge that you have, you know what I mean? Because I think the world would be a better place and you get other people doing things that make them happy as well. So I'm always kind of around that. But so the original podcast, Vision Board, because that wasn't just a sports-related podcast, we would have people like fitness professionals, would have writers, authors, also some really great authors that I pitched. A guy called Robert Greene, and he has like 5 international bestsellers, but he's an incredible sort of writer. And you just learn a lot from those kind of guys. There was another one, because I like strength and conditioning, like a big mentor of mine that I always kind of, you know, watched in the background, always looked at his social media, always blogs. His name was Joe DeFranco, and he's a big strength coach over there. He's the coach for, like, I'm not sure if you watch WWE, like Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, who owns the company and that. So he coaches them, like, in their fitness and stuff like that. And
That's an interesting dude, man.
yeah, so
Fuck, he'd have some stories, eh?
he's got some great stories. He's got a good podcast. It's called Industrial Strength Show. And it's like a mix of stories plus educating, because he's been around for so long. Like, his knowledge of fitness and strength is just like through the roof. And it was good. Like, I remember he came on the show. It was episode, like, it was before the 50th episode. And we wrote back to him, just thanking him for coming on. And he got back to us straight away. Like, he was so impressed by the way we interviewed him. He had never been interviewed on his own podcast. And he asked us to do it for him.
Mad.
And at the time, like, we were going to America anyway, so like the timing really worked out, because he lives over in New York. He lives in New Jersey, so just about maybe half an hour drive out of New York City. So it's like kind of like the New York Jets and New York Jets and what's the other one called? New York. You know, there's 2 NFL teams.
Giants.
Well, realistically, they're called New York, but they're not based in New York because there's like the border between New Jersey and
you can throw a rock at it.
Yeah, it's like Liverpool to Campbelltown sort of thing.
So you just compared New York and New Jersey to Liverpool and Campbelltown.
Just trying to get the boys on the map, mate.
The cultural and industrial centre of the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Go on.
So he's got like a private studio there, but he's got this mad little podcast set up that he's done for himself because he loves his podcast. So because we had arranged to go, we were to go into America, we arranged to have the trip to make sure we go to New York so then we could host it in person with him. And then still to this day, we're the only 2 that's been given the privilege of hosting his show. And he's done
awesome.
Yeah. And because like this was someone that I looked up to for so long, and like the way I used to train people was like how he used to train people. Like it's just like always stuck because he just simplified everything, especially in the strength and conditioning game. A lot of coaches just try to do way too much shit. Do you know what I mean? They try to make people balance on BOSU balls and all sorts of shit. Do you know what I mean? But it's just kind of like those key sort of those exercises. You know, your squat, your deadlift, push, pull, use your sled a lot. You know, just different little things that good strength coaches incorporate within a program that will separate them. And that's what Joe always brought. And also one of my good mates, his name was Graham Morris. He's strength and conditioning coach at Newtown Jets. And he was always kind of like a mentor in that field as well. And between those 2, like they used to train people very, very similar. So that's kind of like where I got my ingredients with training people, and even the way I even train myself now is a lot of knowledge based from these 2 guys. But to sit in the studio and, you know, be given the privilege to host his show, you know, that was something that was pretty cool. So he's a great guy that's been on. Some other guys, I'm not sure if you're on Facebook a little bit, there's a guy called Gary V. Yeah, so I've interviewed Gary V before.
Interviewed Gary V?
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah. So
he's
he's pretty famous. Johnny organised that one, but it was...
How'd you get in contact with Gary V?
Johnny did it through one of his PAs. So that was his
And he was just, cool, let's do it.
At the time, because this was 2 years ago, Gary was...
Had he blown up yet?
Yeah, he had blown up.
Because he's like...
But that was his approach. He's like, whoever asked him to do something, he would do it. So he could be doing 20 interview podcasts in a day. He'd get them all on Skype or something, and that was his way. His kind of theory was, it doesn't matter if you have 100 people or 100,000 people. His message only needs to reach 1. And then he touched so many times. If you do 1,000 interviews and you touch 1 person, it keeps spreading. And do you know what I mean? But you're probably likely to reach more than 1 person.
Because that was like...
It was just quantity. He just was quantity. So pretty much anyone that reached out to him, I think you'd get like on a waiting list or a list for him to appear on your show. And I think that's how he done it. I think he's a little bit more exclusive in the way he picks things now. But a couple of years ago, yeah, he was pretty open to...
Good on you, man.
To doing things like that.
That's a really, really, really good scalp, I think, that Gary V did. I like listening to him.
Yeah, for sure, man. And then Gary V, there's some other cool people that you never thought. Like I grew up, idolising. I used to love boxing through Rocky, man. Do you know what I mean? And to pitch people like George Foreman, I did that through his daughter, because his daughter runs his PR and his social media and that sort of stuff. And Evander Holyfield was another one that I got on. He was pretty sweet. And it's all these boxers, Larry Holmes, some of the more famous, Mario Andretti, the famous race car driver. Yeah, I pitched him through because he's got a PR team and he's pretty cool. It's like talking to Mario was like talking to your grandpa sort of thing. Like he's just this wise old man sort of dude, and you just kind of just let him speak and just take it all in. Like he was a cool dude. And yeah, I've just been blessed, man, just to really just mix. And I think it kind of makes you kind of appreciate life more, and their stories teach you stuff that you might not get access to any other ways. And then the podcast is a great way to then share it with other people. Do you know what I mean? Because like that conversation,
no, 100%. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That conversation might help someone that's been down. It's like a couple of my mates, like I don't even know sometimes who listens to my podcast, but I've had a couple of guys. There was Joe Williams, who used to play for South Sydney, and he does a lot of mental health stuff. And one of my mates was going through a really rough time, and I did a podcast with Joey, and Joey because he's been down in the, he's nearly committed suicide, all sorts of stuff, and Joey sharing his story just helped my mate get through a tough time. And that's what I really appreciate, the fact that these stories are helping people, even if it's just one person. Who knows what my mate would have done if he didn't listen to this podcast, you know what I mean? And I think that's the beauty.
No, absolutely, man. I like that as well. Like we're just starting with the podcast, just.
Yeah.
And but even then, like you get little things like that, like what you just said. Like we've had some interesting people on here as well. We had my mate Tim who works with like.
Is that a psychologist guy?
He's a psych dude that works with like violent sex offenders and blah blah blah. But his take on a lot of stuff when he's explaining things like, there's people like you were saying that like 1 in 3 females has been sexually abused, and the male figures are even higher.
Yeah.
And like then you start to think like, say on a wrestling mat, we're at jiu-jitsu, and then you start to think like. People that have been offended are also offending.
Yeah.
Not always, but there is that correlation. Then you say, look on the mats on a football field. On the football field, there's 26 football players, and statistically, there's a bunch of people there that have been, like, molested or sexually abused, and statistically, there's probably a couple that
Stats are high, right?
Fucking super high. And then you start to think like when you're just walking around just in the hallways, you start to like think about things, and you're like, statistically, I'm running into people that
you just don't know other people's stories. Do you know what I mean? Like someone could walk past us in the street right now, and we don't know what they're going on in their life.
Nah.
Someone could be smiling right now, and we don't know that deep down that they're struggling. Do you know what I mean? So
that thing that when he was telling us about that. When we were talking about it, it just makes you think about was that in and of itself. To me, like I'm not an expert on anything, but that's some of the most horrendous shit that you can occur, and you just to think of those figures being that high, and just what's going on around you. Like then, I went to the gym that day to the grappling gym, and they were there and we're doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling and that, and I was just looking around and I was thinking like statistically. X, Y, and Z, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And your awareness just went through the roof.
Yeah, it just changes the way you see stuff, And then there was people that I know that watched that. Like I genuinely know that through that podcast, and we don't have a big viewership. It's like my mum, through my mum's friends.
My mum now, man.
Yeah, there you go. Something like that. Eli's family, yeah. So just through a small network, because in all fairness, like we just starting. And even Tim's one didn't get massive amounts of views. Yeah. But even through that I know of personally, and there might be others that have gone to see Tim.
Yep.
Probably is about three or 4 people that have gone and seen him and said like might have said one way or another, they reached out to me and said, because can you imagine? Like I've never, but that sort of shit.
It's actually funny that you talked about like numbers and trying to hit people. It's like I'm sure that when the UFC guys are on, all of a sudden the numbers explode. But people don't realise that that's great, all the UFC stories, but the ones that can actually contribute to yourself and get something out of, it's the actually other ones that
100%,
like Tim and some of the other guys that you've had on, even Rob's other coaches.
Yeah, they're
probably better podcasts than the ones that you've done with Rob.
Mate, we were talking about it. We always talk about it. Me and my business partner Alex, we always talk about like we had Craig Alexander on here as well.
Yeah,
and he's like fucking the Michael Jordan of triathlon, and and he's an older guy, not old, but he's an older guy. He's a businessman, entrepreneur, but people, because he's not hot shit right this second,
people don't know who he is.
People don't know who he is, and you're listening to the guy, and you're like, fuck, this guy's like. I'm thinking like, why are you on my podcast, dude?
Yeah.
Surely you could have something else to do. But like, it's like that sort of thing. Like this podcast, all of that. Like Tim's one was big, man, because like to me, just from people that reached out to me to talk about, and like people that you knew, and then they said A, B, C, and D, and I can't imagine that. Like they're our age, you know what I mean? So they come to me and said A, B, C, and D, and I'm like, fuck, there's Tim's number, man.
But that's the beauty. You made an impact on other people. And I think that's the biggest thing. And that's why I love doing the podcast. The first thing people ask because they see all these high profiles, like, how much money are you making from the podcast? Like, I'm not doing it. I love meeting all these people and telling their stories. And I know that their stories can have an impact on someone
Dozens
else.
of dollars. Dozens, mate. Dozens of dollars.
I wish.
Dozens of dollars. $24 a month.
And 50 cents.
Dozens of dollars. No, man. Hey, Ben, we'll wrap it up. But thank you so much for coming. I know you're super fucking
Pleasure,
busy.
brother.
And what have you got? What else have you got coming up with your podcast? What guests have you got coming on your podcast? What
coming up? What I'm thinking is, because I'm nearly at 100, so I just released 92 next week. Still rugby union, Tom Carter. Then I'm going to release the Bill Harrigan one and Paul Sirinen as well. Big Ciro came on, which was good. Paralympian, I did one with him, which was really good. 4-time Paralympian. His name was Matt Levy. So that brings me up to 96. So I've got 4 more to record. I spoke to, Alex McKinnon.
Yep.
He's going to be number 100. So I'm just going to try and fill in 3 more. And then I'm going to take a small break because it's been like 2 years and 8 months back to back every single week that I've been working. So I need probably at least 2 or 3 weeks off. And then we'll get back into season 2. Season 2, I'm thinking I want to do quality over quantity. So instead of doing a 100 season episode, maybe just a 15, 20. And just really targeting them and just making them really good quality podcasts, putting a little bit more time into a lot of, because I like doing little marketing things on the side, but just making them even more, just taking them to another level and just really putting more value for that guest to get out of it post-production as well, because I want those stories to reach as many people as possible, because, as we've been speaking about, the impact that it can have on people is through the roof. So that's kind of where my intentions are for season 2, quality over quantity, reach more people, and just provide more value for my guests.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tristan, for coming out.
Pleasure,
Thanks
brother.
a lot.
Anytime.
Thank you. Thanks, Eli. Thanks a lot.